The Q101 Morning Crew.
On Q101.
Brian and Kenzie on Q101 again. Green Day tickets, 8 a.m. tomorrow morning for Wrigley Field.
1952 North Lincoln, banging on the doors.
True Crime Tuesdays with Brian and Kenzie. This actually happened.
I'll make sure my camera's on.
So here's what it is. Every Tuesday, Kenzie brings a story of murder, mystery, intrigue, fascination to us all. And they relate to Chicago and Illinois. And so far, you're 1 for 1.
Thank you.
Last week's was...
Call me Jordan.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's right. I mean, that was terrifying and ridiculous. So what do you got for us today?
Now, this is a classic, but I do think that a lot of people don't know the whole story, know bits and pieces, and I think so many rumors have gone and developed around this story that I'm excited to actually give the whole breakdown, because even though I had heard of Mr. H.H. Holmes and his murder hotel,
Yes.
I did not realize his previous past. I didn't realize the other scandals he committed beyond his murder hotel, and even what sits on that land today.
Well, this is one I do know about. Last week I didn't, but I know about this guy, but I don't know everything. And I'm guessing, I'd say like maybe 40% of Chicagoans, 50% know of this story, but there's so much to it. So I'm ready to listen to this.
No, I'm excited about, not that it happened, but I'm excited to say the story. I would like to clarify.
We know you didn't agree with these guys.
Asterisk at the top of that. My bad. I would like to retract the statement. Okay. So, otherwise known as Henry Howard Holmes. So many think he was a Chicago man. He was not. He actually moved to Chicago in 1886, leaving behind his previous life as well as his previous name. He was born Herman Webster Mudgett.
Three names, those serial killers.
Okay, well, everybody's got a first last name. Okay.
But when they say it, it stands out more.
And now he changed his name due to previous scandals, because this is before TikTok. You know what I'm saying? So
what years are we talking about here with this guy?
1886 is when he moved to Chicago.
Okay.
So it's an oldie but a goodie, if you will. Several of the scandals that he was escaping with his previous name included him mutilating cadavers in an anatomy lab that he worked in to defraud life insurance companies.
Oh, it sounds like a good scam.
He was the last person to be seen with a boy who was pronounced missing in New York.
Oof.
And he worked as a pharmacist in Philly, and many of his patients died after taking pills.
Jeez.
So,
this guy's a menace.
Yes. So he skipped out of all of those messes and ended up here in Chicago. Now, obviously, despite a wildly sketchy past and behavior, he was really known for being charming and attractive and charismatic. Truly like a moth to a flame situation. So much so, he was so attractive and charismatic. While he was here in Chicago, he was once married to 3 women at once, and they did not know about each other.
I'm starting to like this guy.
Okay. Interesting. Really, I listed all those scandals. Okay.
No, those things are bad.
Those were fine?
This most recent thing's not so bad.
Oh, boy.
He's also, you talked about him being handsome. He does have a mustache like Case the Producer. I don't know if everybody in the 1800s walked around with those mustaches.
It does seem like it was a common thing. You know,
Yeah.
they do call me K. Scott Lowe, another 3-name guy right here.
Oh, yeah. Might appear on the program next week in this segment.
Well, it would make my show prep a lot easier, so that's fine.
You just ask the serial killer.
Yeah, no, that would
So
that
why
would
you
help.
do it?
I gotta be honest, that would help. Couldn't get an in-person interview with this one. Okay, so obviously he moved here, he escaped all those scandals, he had 3 wives, and he decided to buy a plot of land to build on, a very large one. Okay, now this was an investment property, if you will. The main floor was going to be rented to business owners, okay? The top level was for apartments and residents, and the second level is actually where kind of the evil began, was somewhere in between. The second floor, now we have to throw in allegedly because we can't view it now.
That's too bad.
Allegedly housed asphyxiation chambers, mazes, and hidden staircases.
Ugh, I just got chills.
Now, the basement was really That's where the most unlucky of all visitors attended, which has now been called an elaborate torture chamber and what he became famous for. Okay.
Yeah.
This is interesting now. While building this property, right? You may be like, how could you get away with creating this? Because that's what I was wondering. There's a way he built this hotel by himself.
Right.
He consistently switched builders and fired architects throughout construction, so nobody was aware of everything that went into it.
Oh. So he came in there and goes, no, this is supposed to take a left turn here, you're fired or whatever. And then they didn't know the completed project was going to be a torture chamber.
Now, within 2 years of opening, cops were already in the trauma-filled hallways investigating. But they were not investigating for what you think they were investigating for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I kind of want to pause there.
Okay.
Because I know we have to do one pause.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you, okay, we still have to talk about what the cops found, what happened to him, and why they were originally investigating him, and actually what the building is today.
Okay, good. I want to hear all about the rest. When we come back at 8:50, we'll give you the rest of this story. Stay here. And this is literally one of the most terrifying stories of Chicago history in crime,
He is
murder.
known as one of the world's most notorious serial killers.
Yeah, I can tell
And
you.
he was right here in Chicago.
Hey, right here, and I can tell you that Leonardo DiCaprio and Martin Scorsese were going to do a series. I think during the pandemic it got postponed or canceled or whatever. But this guy has everything to do with Chicago, and you'll learn more about H.H. Holmes next in True Crime Tuesday.
The Q101 Morning Crew.
On Q101.
The Q101 Morning Crew.
On Q101.
1952 North Lincoln, banging on the doors.
True Crime Tuesdays with Brian and Kenzie. This actually happened.
I'll make sure my camera's on.
And this one, you hear that this actually happened, is so insane that Kenzie's brought us today the story of H.H. Holmes, which some of you out there have heard some of the story about him. And some of you maybe dive into those Netflix documentaries. There's so much about this guy. The Devil in the White City was the book. But Kenzie's in the middle of telling us the story in case you're new to it. A lot of people are hanging on the edge of their seat on the text line and the phones. And also maybe a surprise thing in a second here at the end of your story relating to H.H. Holmes and possibly someone alive in this story.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you're not familiar with H.H. Holmes, he's actually not a Chicago man, and that is not his birth name. Just as a quick recap, he moved here after escaping several scandals throughout New York and Philly, including people dying on his prescription medicine, manipulating cadavers and defrauding life insurance companies, and missing children, last being seen with him. He built on a large plot of land here in Chicago after changing his name and escaping his scandalous past. He had 3 wives that did not know about each other because he was a charming, attractive man. And while building this property, it seemed like an investment property. Included apartments, it included business rentals, and it also included a full-blown torture chamber in which he fired and rehired different architects and builders throughout the process so nobody could connect the dots and see all of the rooms.
Yeah.
So it was only open for 2 years. That was it until cops were already in the trauma-filled hallways. And I just want to take an exact excerpt of what they found. There were hinged walls and false partitions. Some rooms had 5 doors and others had none. Secret airless chambers were found underneath floorboards.
Airless chambers?
Yes.
Oh, that's the worst.
Has that happened to you?
Well, so thinking about how you're going to go out, like you're suffocating. Oh.
And iron plate lined walls appeared to stifle all sound.
Oh.
Now, as for his own apartment, which was in that building, it had a trap door in the bathroom, which opened to reveal a staircase that led to a windowless cubicle. In the cubicle, there was allegedly a large chute that tunneled through to the basement that was not used for laundry and trash. Just in case you're wondering, it was used for his victims. A notable room was lined with gas fixtures, and he would apparently seal victims in, flip a switch in the adjacent room, and wait for the horror to unfold. And another chute was found nearby. All the doors and some of the steps were connected to an intricate alarm system. Whenever someone stepped into the hall or headed downstairs, a buzzer sounded in his bedroom.
Oh, God.
This is what the cops found, okay?
Yep.
Now, cops finally got to the true horror. Those are just things throughout. You're talking the second level in his own apartment,
Right.
okay? Now, cops finally were able to get to the basement and unveiled the actual torture chamber, which H.H. Holmes is truly most famous for. It included a blood-soaked operating table, women's clothing, a crematory, medical tools, bizarre torture devices, and disintegrating acids.
Well, he sounds like he was well prepared.
It's unbelievable. Now, he did have, in an unbelievable way, he was super educated. He was a pharmacist. He had worked in laboratories before, and he had taken all of that medical information. I mean, that's why he chose those careers.
Right.
Was because of his unhealthy fascination. Not many people are in the health field because they care about people, and his was truly the exact opposite. Now, after sending victims down the chute, he would disinfect them, clean their bodies, and he often sold the organs and the skeletons to medical institutes and on the black market.
Sold the organs?
And skeleton bones.
Even back then in the 1800s, they wanted organs?
Yes.
That's wild.
Now, one of the reasons the cops were able to further investigate and head down to that basement is they did find many small bones. Some were animal, but some were undoubtedly those of a young child mixed in.
This guy's a bad guy.
Thank you, Brian. It's always very helpful on the true crime segment.
Not good.
Coming through.
Not good.
Now, what landed him behind bars and started the investigation for the cops had nothing to do with this crime-filled, horrible serial killer persona. It was actually a financial scheme that somebody had reported. And they arrested him, and as they decided to search his place of business due to it being this financial scheme, that's when their focus started to shift on the serial killer aspect and shift away from the financial discrepancy.
He's not just Bernie Madoff. He's doing a little bit more stuff in there.
Absolutely. Making Bernie look like a pretty good guy. He was convicted officially and connected to 9 murders at the start and put away. While being put away, he confessed to many murders, and those timelines were very conflicting. It was, to be honest, a little bit confusing for them, but they were able to connect all of his confessions to about 27 murders. Now, even he himself quoted this. I'm going to take an exact excerpt. "I was born with the devil in me," he would later explain. I could not help the fact that I was a murderer no more than a poet can help the inspiration to sing," which is terrifying to think that he thought he couldn't help but murder people.
I think a lot of people in that world, when you hear those interviews with them, they talk like that a little bit, that there's something inside them that they just can't stop.
There was just something, he lacked empathy clearly in every area. Now, some have predicted the actual amount of victims is in the hundreds. Now that historians have looked back, it was the Chicago World Fair.
Right.
Many of his victims were actually the women he employed, because back then it was easy to be like, oh, well, she ran off and wanted to travel the world, and nobody followed up. So he murdered many women that he employed, as well as all the transient workers because of the Chicago Fair. And there is rumors that he was actually Jack the Ripper, and it's one of the lives that he escaped, but that part is not 100% solid.
And how do they find that stuff out now? Like, how can you go back and actually try to prove it now with all forensic evidence, DNA, whatever? You can't.
I will say it takes a unique person to a unique set of skills to do the things he did.
Yeah.
And I think that does play into it. He was sentenced to hang to death, which even that was very, very eerie. He said, shortly before he died in 1896, he suggested that he was turning into the devil. Even his face, he said, was taking on a demonic look.
Ugh.
So he started to be almost fearful of his own self.
Yeah.
And when they tried to hang him, he actually lasted for over 20 minutes.
Oh, God.
Now,
Gross.
the evilness kind of continued after his passing when most people who encountered him while he was locked up and waiting for death row to ensue, the prison caught on fire, and most of the people who guarded him, such as the warden and the officers, actually ended up killing themselves.
Killed themselves?
After his passing. Yes.
What the hell?
Now, the murder hotel is no longer standing here in Illinois. Again, the evilness of him totally ensued beyond. It was gutted by a fire several years after he died.
Ooh.
Then, of course, the building was torn down. And today, what sits on that land is a post office here in Illinois, which explains my debacle with all my invites. But still, it's cursed.
I thought, was it in Bridgeport? Is that where it is? I thought it was over that way.
I don't know, Brian.
Okay, my
Damn
bad.
It. I would have added that, obviously.
I'm sorry. I thought that's where the area where it
You
was.
have zero prep to do on this. You can just Google that.
I just sit back and listen for this segment. I just sit back and listen. I thought it was over in Bridgeport in that area. Wow. Well, what if I told you, Kenzie? What if I told you on the phone right now, we have someone that is related to the man you've just been speaking of for the last 10 minutes?
I mean, I don't want to get to know them super well. I don't know.
So
What do you got for me?
Denisa is checking in, and she says she's a distant relative of H.H. Holmes.
Wow. Okay. Bring it on up, Denisa.
Denisa, ahoy, welcome in.
Good morning.
And you're telling the truth?
I am definitely telling the truth based on what I can find through genealogy.
Well, what's the relation?
From what I found, he would technically be my fifth cousin 4 times removed.
What does it mean when you get removed? I've asked this before. I don't know what it means.
There's a difference in generation. So he's 4 generations before me.
I see.
Okay. You guys didn't go to picnics together, obviously, so it was a different time.
Of course not. And we're talking about the connection being formed in 17th century. So very, very distant.
Well, he had a lot of, 3 wives at the same time, as everyone knows. But most of the women he employed, besides murdering them, he was actually having affairs with. So there's probably a lot of people related to him and don't realize that.
Yeah.
That really, it doesn't surprise me because he just had not a lot of moral code action going on. Were you the first person in your family to realize that you guys were related?
Yes, it was quite creepy, just the fact that I'm born and raised in Chicago, so to make that connection, it was pretty nuts.
And how did you find out about how did you get to the point? Was it one of those, Ancestry.com deals?
It was Family Search, which is another site. So the fact that I caught a documentary on him and his hometown of Gilmanton, New Hampshire sounded familiar to me. So that kind of led me to dig, and I discovered that, yes, I had ancestors also from that same area, so we were related.
God, that is terrifying.
Does it bother you? Do you want to know in what way, how he came into your family? Do you know anybody else that you're connected to in that history that you can connect any dots?
It would be his father's side of the family. I can go all the way back to, let me see, I believe it's 1670 something by the time where his ancestor happened to be a sibling of my ancestor. So that's how we have the connection.
Do you tell everybody this except for us? I mean, or do you keep it quiet?
I kind of keep it quiet, but the fact that I was listening this morning was pretty, I decided to send a text.
And we're glad you called in, too. Wow. That's just got to be, again, something that when you go to bed at night and you're sitting there and you put your head on the pillow and you think about, I'm related to this guy somehow. That's wild.
You don't feel any of his energy in there, do you? Or are you pretty positive person?
I try to stay positive. But yeah, there's been some other things discovered on my father's side of the family because his family came here not long after the first, group of settlers sailed over here from England. So there's been a lot of oddballs I've come across.
And that could be the Jack the Ripper theory there, coming from England.
I know.
Yeah, it was kind of, creepy to find that. But, I think he's America's Jack the Ripper, not so much England.
Yeah, clearly. All right,
Well, you can't be related to both, right? You're like, come on.
Yeah, no.
I don't want him to be. Can't be England's too.
well, Denisa, thanks for checking in. What do you do for a living, by the way, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm an accountant.
Okay, cool. Thought you worked at the post office, maybe, that, we're over there, Murder Castle.
No, I think that would be extremely eerie to go visit, though. I think I remember seeing one person do a show and they went in the basement and just weird feeling. So I don't know if I'd have the nerve to go down there.
It's on West 63rd Street, by the way. That's where, I'm sure you know where it is, but that's where it is over there, 611 West 33rd Street, where that post office is now, what Kenzie talked about. Well, Denisa, thanks for checking in. And
Thank you, guys.
I feel like it's weird saying, like, good luck,
Well, we like you, Denisa.
Yeah, we do.
We're not going to hold you accountable for your fifth cousin 4 times removed. I want you to know that.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
The Q101 Morning Crew.
On Q101.